Hello. The purpose of this video is we're going to set up a default preset for importing photos into Lightroom. I want to note that I'm using Adobe Lightroom Classic, the full version. It doesn't really matter which version of Lightroom you're using, whether it's from 5-6 years ago or through the foreseeable future. The preset we're creating is only going to be adjusting basic settings, and I can't see those settings changing anytime in the near future. I also want to point out this video is geared toward RAW files. When you import RAW files, they're what we call muddy. They're not very vibrant, they're not very sharp, they're not very contrasty. This is because the sensor is capturing all of the data from a picture, and we're going to need to refine that a little bit. Now, why would you want to create a preset? As you import all your pictures, you'll notice that you're making the same adjustments to every single picture that you want to edit. And to save some time, we're going to create a preset so that we take those same edits that you make on every single picture, and it's just going to automatically apply them to all of the pictures as you import them into Lightroom. The goal is to do 80, maybe 85% of the work for you during import. That way, when you go to edit the pictures a little bit later, you're not starting from zero, you're starting from an 80% mark, and it saves you a little bit of time because you can apply all these to all the images as you're bringing them in. One of the first things you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go take a picture somewhere. We want to take a picture in what we're going to consider good lighting. So ideally, you want your picture to be somewhere between ISO 100 and 640. I wouldn't try and go too much higher than that. Ideally, you want to be somewhere between 100 and 200, or as close to those numbers as you can get. It's fine if you go to 400. The reason for that is we don't want to start with an image that's severely underexposed or severely dark and have to do a bunch of heroic efforts to bring the details back into that picture and then save that as a preset, because a super dark image is probably not going to be what you're taking a picture of most of the time. The idea is most of the time you're going to be taking a picture in what we consider adequate lighting. So somewhere with the histogram, somewhere in the middle. This one's a little bit dark, but that's pretty normal for RAW files, so this one's okay. One of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to change some behaviors here in Adobe Lightroom. These panels here, these are kind of categories or groupings of adjustments you're going to make to the image. So for example, the basic, these are some basic adjustments we're going to make, tone curve, color mixer, so on and so forth. As you notice, as I expand each one of these panels, they stack on top of each other, and me personally, I think it starts to look a little bit cluttered. So I'm going to change this behavior so that only one panel is open at a particular time. To do that, go to one of the panel names, right-click on it, and select Solo Mode. Now, when I want to, here I have the basic panel open. If I want to adjust tone curve, I click on tone curve. It automatically collapses the basic panel and expands the tone curve. This allows me to focus in on just one aspect of something I'm trying to change in the image and not have a lot of clutter in the tool menu over on the side there. I also want to note that any changes you make today in this profile, that this is probably not gonna, you're probably going to want to make some changes to it. This is not going to be the same exact profile you're going to use in 6 months to a year. As you grow as a photographer, as your skill increases, as your tastes change, you may want to come back in and adjust this profile to adapt to that. For example, if we're going to put some exposure on this image here in a few minutes, and in the future, if you notice that you always bringing the exposure up a little bit more in your pictures, then it might be worthwhile to go ahead and adjust the exposure where you want it and just re-update your preset so that way it's automatically done on all the images you're going to bring in. This is also an instance where I am going to advocate for pixel peeping. We do want to zoom in on our image so that we can see how the changes we're making are affecting our image. So this is not a bad picture, but we do want to come in so we can see the details a little bit more as we adjust them. And this will just allow us, a kind of a clearer view so we can see how things are changing in the picture. Now, overall, this is not a bad image. I do want to bring the exposure up just a little bit. So I think 0.55 is pretty good right there. You may or may not notice some drastic changes as you're watching this. YouTube's going to do some compression on the video, and it may, remove or reduce some of the details that I'm seeing here on my screen. So you'll have to do this for yourself so you can see it and hopefully not get filtered out by the YouTube compression algorithms. As we mentioned before, raw images are not very contrasty, so I always want to bring a little bit of contrast back in. I actually like that right about there. So about plus 10, that brought some contrast back between the light and dark pixels. I think that's about where we want it. Since we did bring the exposure up, that's a global setting, so it brightened all the pixels in the image and made these, the back where the sun is hitting these leaves here, we lost a little bit of detail there. So we're going to drag this highlights down a little bit to bring some of those details back. And I like it, yeah, right about there, -71. At any time, you can double click on the slider you're adjusting and it'll reset it back to normal. So there you can see it brought those pixels back bright again. And if I bring it back down to negative, -71, -72, it doesn't have to be, super exact. It just reduces the brightness of some of those pixels and you get a little bit of those details back. Same thing with the shadows, here under some of the leaf or some of his feathers and maybe under, I guess those are ear feathers. We want to bring a little bit of the details in the shadows back a little bit. So we're going to bring the shadows up just a hair to whatever you feel looks pretty good. I like that. Yeah, right about there. Brought some details back, and especially right in this area that I kind of like. I might even go a little bit more. Yeah, I'm going to go there. Same thing with the whites. We want to adjust how bright some of those white pixels are. This particular camera body, I don't have to do a whole lot with that, so I'm only going to go to +8. And then the blacks, I like, this is going to adjust how dark the blacks are in your image or how black the blacks are. I like what we call crunchy images, so I kind of like those blacks to be, pretty dark. So I'm going to bring this down. Yeah, right about -14. I kind of like that. It's not going too far, but it is bringing, some darkness back into those black pixels. Clarity, we're going to go ahead and we're going to bring that one up just a little bit. I like to add a little bit of clarity. This just brings some contrast back in the midtones. We don't want to go overboard with it. If you find that you want to increase clarity, I think you should probably do that more on an individual picture, and we just want to go the bare minimums on this kind of import preset we're creating. Vibrance, as we mentioned before, raw files are not very vibrant. They don't have a lot of saturation in some of the colors. We want to bring this up, a reasonably substantial amount. I like right over, might be a little too much. Let's bring that back down. +15. I think that brings a lot of the greens back and also brings some of the oranges back in the owl's eye. I kind of like that where it's at right there. Let's go ahead and jump down to the details tab. So we're going to go ahead and adjust some sharpening. I like really sharp images, so I'm going to bring this up a pretty substantial amount. And you can see how it's affecting, especially right here in his forehead. As I, adjust this and bring it up and down, you'll see those. If you focus in on the area, you'll see the details of those feathers coming in and out. I really like to have a lot of those details in there, so I'm going to put that about 90 as far as sharpening. All camera sensors have noise. Doesn't matter what ISO you're at, you're going to have some degree of noise. That's just a fact of life. So we probably want to put just a touch of noise reduction in the luminance tab. Even at ISO 100 or I'm at 160 in this particular image, we still want to add just a little bit as a baseline. So I'm probably going to go 17 or 18. Yeah, I think right about there. I think that does pretty well, because not all my images that I import are going to be at ISO 160. They might be, ISO 640 or 800 or something a little bit higher. And this just gives me a good baseline to kind of start with. And the last thing we're probably going to want to change is some lens corrections. So we want to go ahead and we want to check this box for removing chromatic aberrations. And we also want to go ahead and check this box for enable profile corrections. All lenses have some degree of distortion because as light passes through glass and we either magnify or change it a little bit, it's going to distort the image a little bit. What this is going to do is Lightroom's going to correct for any distortions that are caused by your lens automatically in the picture, and that just brings you to a little bit more accurate picture to considering what you're closer to what your eye saw as you took the picture. And that's about all the basic settings we're going to want to do for just a default import preset. So now that we have all of those, we'll go up here to the Develop menu and we'll click on New Preset. And here we get to name the preset. Name it something that makes sense to you. So for me, I'm going to do like Jake's default import. Lightroom usually does a pretty good job of checking all the boxes of things you've changed, but go ahead and double check this. So we know we changed a lot of these things in the basic panel. We know we changed these things in the detail panel, as well as the lens corrections. And then you want to also go ahead and have that calibration box checked as well. I think this looks, I don't think we changed anything else. I think we're pretty good here. So go ahead and click on Create. And there, now your first profile or preset is created. And we can apply this when you import images into the future to get you, started at a good baseline.